My card making motto has always been, why work so hard on a card background if all I'm going to do is make it a backdrop for a foreground element? I think you should work to make your stenciled backgrounds work for you. Here are 3 transformative ways to use your Altenew layering stencils. This tutorial will feature elements from the modern and abstract ensemble, and will feature the everyday sentiments and modern rainbow border hot foil plates, as well as the abstract patterns stencil set. This stencil set is free-forming, which means there are no layering guides, just your creativity on how you want to color and use these stencils. One of the nuances of stenciling as opposed to pattern papers is making your stenciled element your own. You can control every aspect of coloring, textures, and mediums. I'm starting with an ink blended background, and I'm using the sticky mat on the Altenew stamp wheel to hold down my cardstock. I'm starting with Sea Forest dye ink from Nature's Wonders dye ink family, then using Coffee Break dye inks in Sand Dunes, then Rocky Shore for an earth tone gradient on my white cardstock. I love using stencils as embossing plates. Sometimes I want the texture of an embossing folder without the intensity. These geometric type stencils are perfect for that. To layer up a stencil embossed panel, I'll start with the stencil itself. This is the #1 stencil in Abstract Patterns Builder Stencil Set. Then I'll place my gradient panel face down in order to emboss the open pattern of the stencil. Then I'll use the tan embossing mat and embossing plate to finish off this stencil layering sandwich. After running this through my die cutting machine, I have this really subtle pattern on my ink blended cardstock. Now this cardstock is the perfect backdrop for other minimal elements I want to incorporate into this card. From the Meadow Reflection stamp set, I'll gold powder heat emboss 3 of the butterfly images, and use the coordinating dies to cut them out. With more vellum, I'll make a crumpled band to add another element of texture to this card. I'll use Everyday Sentiments hot foil plates set to act as my sentiment and focal element to this card. I'll surround the circular sentiment with the heat embossed butterfly images. And finally, finish this card with antique gold sequins. This stenciled embossed technique combined with an ink blended background helps give a little bit more interest to the background without taking away from the shiny focal elements. This second card uses a little bit of color theory to make the perfect palette for stenciled backgrounds. I'm starting with this pink cardstock panel from my stash and overlaying Stencil 2 from Abstract Patterns Builder Stencil. To make this ink blended background work, I need color families that are one step forward and backward from my cardstock color on the color wheel. So in my case, I'm going to orange and purple to pick analogous colors for my background. If your background is purple, for example, you'll pick red and blue as your analogous colors. I'm starting with Warm and Cozy Crisp dye ink and Sun-Kissed to ink blend Stencil 2 on my pink cardstock. I'll add orange cream to deepen the top half of the cardstock just for fun. Then I'll use Stencil 3 and Rose Petal family of inks in Rose Quartz. Then Puffy Heart to create the second layer of this background. I used the Puffy Heart metallic shimmer spray to fill in the open areas of my background with some splatter. With Archways Die Set, I'll make this really intense background do a little bit more work for me. I'll cut this modern arch image from the center of my pink stenciled background. Before I pop out all of the arcs, I'll use my stamp wheel to easily make one stenciled background into 2 cards. For this first card, I'll put the die cut cardstock and inlay pieces face down onto my sticky mat. Then I'll apply liquid adhesive only to the inlay arc images. Then on my folded note card base with an off-white panel of cardstock, I'll press the card base and align it to the stenciled background. so that when I remove the cardstock from my sticky mat, I can remove the negative stenciled cardstock and leave behind the positive arc cardstock on my card base. Then all I need to do is foam mount the other cardstock panel onto another folded note card base. And now I have two cards made from the same stenciled background. I won't add sentiments to these. I feel like it suits this modern arch motif like some wall art. The layering stencils from Abstract Patterns Builder Stencil Set also coordinate with other crafting items from the Modern and Abstract Ensemble, such as this Modern Rainbow Builder Hot Foil Plate. I'll use this plate to add a debossed foil texture that resists ink blending. Back into the stamp wheel, I'll use Morning Frost Crisp Dye ink from Warm Gray to fill in the number 1 stencil. I'm doing this next step in a different order because I want to use my Altenew embossing paste. However, I also want to die cut this pattern background. In order to preserve the texture of the embossing paste without flattening the texture in my die cutting machine, I'll die cut my background first using some circle dies from my stash. Then I can inlay the die cut pieces into my stamp wheel and apply embossing paste with the number 3 stencil. Now I have mixed ink, foil, and embossing paste with these layering stencils and coordinating hot foil plates. And by die cutting the cardstock before embossing paste, I can easily take apart the image and preserve that nice opaque and textured element. So while that dries, I'll make my focal pieces to complement this abstract cloud and rainbow background. The first element is one of the cranes from Red Crowned Cranes layering die set. I've cut the pieces from black and white cardstock as shown, and I colored one of the layers with alcohol artist markers to add in some details. Then to assemble this first card, I'll foam mount the outermost background and innermost die cut circle, and arrange the crane and one of the foiled circle sentiments from Everyday Sentiments. Then for the circular frame, I've paired it with a black cardstock branch from Archways Die Set and another circular foiled sentiment. I embellished this card with enamel dots, and that's another 2-for-1 card using mixed media stenciling techniques. Another way to make your backgrounds do the work for you. My series encourages you to shop your existing Altenew stash and rekindle their love with newer releases. Perfect Pairings with Jaycee airs on the Altenew channel every 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Perfect Pairing episode with me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hello there! Did that video just spark your creativity? And do you want more project ideas and inspiration videos too? Well, if you do, please make sure that you subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you do click that notification bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye!